We call it the guard shack, but the guard tower has a nice ring.
I'm very impressed.
You don't have to try for that.
I'm gonna just start, my job in the district is very similar to Brian's. We try our very best to help with all the brand new technology because it's ever changing. And so we call ours, instead of co-teaching, we do they call co-service. But I'm starting to see that pendulum go back from that co-service method to more of the resource room. So it's funny how it kind of keeps going back and forth and back and forth. But we love to use our iPads for that co-service model. And not only do we only offer it to our students on IEP 504s, but we found more success where we offer it to the whole student population. And then that way our students that are on IEPs or 504s don't feel isolated or excluded, but we've also seen a benefit in offering it to the regular ed students as well with test scores and the data that comes back from that as well. So pretty much the whole class, including the teachers, both co-teachers, are actually benefiting from all those different services. Now, I did put a slideshow on here. I also did make a print copy. I know Brian doesn't like paper, but my background is art, and I love paper. I like to doodle and take notes, both hand and digital, so I always provide handouts as well, too. So if you want to follow along with the slideshow on the paper on this, you can access the slideshow anyway. But I'd like you to follow along, too. If you see anything that really, calls out to you, then ask questions, or if you have me to stop or need me to stop, feel free to do that as well. Yep. Is it turning? There you go. You can skip that one.
Just a glorified slideshow.
And let's skip this too.
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing that we found that really works, and this was the easiest to implement in all of our classrooms, are QR codes. Is anybody using QR codes now? What do you guys use them for?
Probably the same thing.
I know you use it for Freckle, but I use it anytime I have a website, something that the kids have to access. I've noticed that they can't just type it out.
And a lot of people think that this is hard, but I think this is the easiest thing to implement ever, because all you have to do is go to any QR code generator website, dump in your URL, and it pops out a QR code, and the kids just use their camera and they can scan any QR code, and so you're not wasting instruction time by offering them that URL. We use QR codes all the time. We'll post them around the classroom to get kids up, so they're using that left brain, right brain mentality. To get them up, scan a QR code, go to this website. We also use this a lot for read-alouds. A lot of our students on their 504 or IEPs have to have read-alouds for tests and instruction. And so what our teachers are doing is they're reading the test aloud on their iPad using Screencastify, or you can use another app, and they read the test aloud. They go through the whole test. And then the students scan the QR code, and as they're taking the test, they can listen to their teacher's voice, rewind, play, pause, go back, go through the whole test again. And so the teacher's not reading to a whole class and missing some kids possibly. But what else is nice about this is the little kind of specks of niceties that you can put in there. Like, I know you're going to do a great job on your test today. Please take your time. And then at the end of the recording, they'll say, I want you to go back, I want you to rewind this whole video, and I want you to listen to it again and check over your answers. And what's nice is it differentiates to the whole class and puts them on pace for their time. So you're not rushing through questions, you're not going too slow where these other kids are getting bored. It lets them at their own pace. And what's so nice is all of your kids have their own iPads and they can go at their own pace. Now, what we've seen is in this co-service model, we do not only offer it to the kids that are 504s, we offer it to the entire class. And what we've seen is a lot of the regular ed or gen ed population is picking up on this because they just feel better being able to hear the teacher read aloud too. And hey, I didn't catch that, or maybe I would like to have it read aloud to me too. So we're seeing this as one of the most common uses of with the iPad and the camera itself is this option of QR coding. And what's interesting background, and I know you like cars, this all started in the automotive industry, and the education world just picked it up. And like I said, I use this all the time for active learning, collaborative learning, but also those read-alouds. And Brian said he is more than welcome if this is something you want to try. He will gladly help you set it up so you can implement it in your class and show you how to record it. It's a little bit of work up front with the read-aloud, but it saves you a lot of time in class instruction too, when your kids are taking the test. They can listen to it at their own pace, but you have the option now of kind of walking around the room and helping individual students with different questions as well. And this next one on the same lines as the camera with scanning QR codes, you don't have to have a specific QR reader either. All the kids have to do is open the camera and they scan the QR code and it automatically comes up, which is nice on the iPad. You don't have to have an app for the QR reader. Now, the markup in photos is great too for note taking on both teacher and student. So when you take a picture, like let's say your student's taking in a section. Do you want to take the picture? So that way you can see. So let's say you're reading a novel or a text, or a student's walking around the room, they're working in a lab or a project, they can take a picture of it and then click on edit, which you guys can't see. But when they click on edit, it gives you all of these options, but the one I want you to look at is the ellipsis up at the top right. And in that ellipsis you have markup. Now when you go into markup, this now becomes a note. So the kids can draw on this, they can write on this. So like if you're working in a specific textbook or the student's reading a novel, you can have them highlight specific passages or take notes on specific passages. Or if they see something that they need a little bit more help with, or you see something they need a little bit, or hey, I just need you to read this paragraph. And what that does is it's giving ownership back to the student, taking notes on their own, taking photographs on their own, and now they have these in their photos. And kids are really good with photos. They know this stuff. They get the camera, they get the photos. This is something, especially when we're reaching out to something that's meaningful to our kids, they get photography. So that's a good one to use too. Now the next one is for reading fluency. This is called Voice, and all these apps are all in your iPad already. Voice memos is the next one. Any questions about the camera or markup or QR code? This next one is for voice memo. So if you just want to go to the app on voice memo.
Sure.
A lot of our students on their goals are reading fluency and comprehension. A lot of times we just read them a passage, or they read the passage, and we say, okay, what did you comprehend, or what did you take away from that section of text? But if we take it a step further with that whole idea of technology innovation, have the student record themselves reading the passage in voice memos, and it's super easy. And somebody asked in the last class, and I thought this was a great question. If you go off of this app, and let's say they're in, let me go to something else. We're in, I don't know, Adobe. Oh, that's not good. But you see the little record button up at the top, the red? So if the student was reading something, you could have both apps on at once, and then they just click back on the red button and they can replay themselves reading the passage and see what they can comprehend. Because sometimes our special ed kids need to get it a couple different ways. Them reading the passage, them hearing the passage read aloud. But what's even more powerful is having them read it, record the passage, and play it back and be able to see what are they comprehending from their own voice. Or even be able to hear their own reading fluency. How fluent are they reading that specific passage? Super easy, it's already on there, and the kids actually have it on their phones too, or if you have an iPhone, that voice memo app is automatically on your phones as well. So any questions about that one either? All right, this next one, you probably didn't put this one on there, did you, Chalkboard?
No, I do not have this one.
I like this one because, again, coming from the art background, all of these chalkboard apps, I think, are phenomenal for just the students to actually be able to almost use this as a whiteboard, but in a little bit more energetic, fun, colorful way. And it's nice, too, because you can see their work. It works just like the chalkboards from when we were kids, but it actually shows you a quick formative assessment. Okay, how many students are actually getting what I'm teaching right now? You could do a quick yes or no, a quick assessment to see, okay, where are we at? You want to see them write out the work. And sometimes with our students, they learn in different ways. It might be a tactile learner. They might be more of a visual learner. And so you're being able to differentiate to different groups, and you're just offering this as an option. And there's tons. Now, this doesn't automatically come with the iPad, but I have, this one is called Hello Chalk. There's Hello Colored Pencil, Hello Crayon, but this is a great formative assessment. And if you're being observed too, and they're asking, okay, well, how are you doing a quick check, or how are you doing a formative assessment? If you're using the iPad for a quick, okay, solve this equation, you could do it on your iPad, and just giving them those fun options of apps just really helps in the classroom too, to just make it more interesting for the students as well. Now, the next thing I want to go over is Those are just some fun apps to try. Those are the easiest ones to first implement. I know sometimes getting an iPad is overwhelming, but those ones that we've seen in Amherst are the quickest and easiest ways to get effective data back quickly. But just to know where the accessibility features are on your iPad is really important too, not for your learning and teaching, but for your students' learning. And to be able to say, okay, it says here on your 504 that you have a hard time reading or a hard time hearing. You need to be able to find those accessibility features for your students. Now, all of the accessibility features are in the same place on all your Apple products. So if you click on General, so if you go into your settings and click, are you gonna do it?
I will say, just so you know, I updated to iOS 13. Normally you hit General, and most of you will see Accessibility right in here somewhere. On the new operating system, 13 or higher, Accessibility is broken out as its own. But at this point, what you see here is still the same content. It's just you go in through the menu on the right. Once you're on operating system 13, you'll go into the Accessibility icon on the left,
and
rather than General.
You guys are in a good career path because this is like the super trendy stuff right now is accessibility in education. So this is like the trend right now, and that's why Apple pulled it to the forefront instead of going into General and then going into accessibility. They made it its own tab because it is becoming so popular and so trendy with all the companies. They're trying to push out as many accessibility features as possible to access technology or to offer technology for everybody. Now, the first one I want to show you is called Grayscale. I've done this to my kid's phone. I've done this to students' computers. I tried it on my own phone for a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm on my phone that much. But if you go into accessibility and you go into display and text, and then you go into color filters, but in mine it's different. So if you can't find it, I'll show it to you. Click on color filters and you turn on Grayscale.
I did it. It didn't grayscale up to on the board.
Is yours grayscale on your computer?
Yeah, it did it here, but it's
Oh, well, I'll show you then on mine. So here's a regular screen. So this is for your kids with sensory problems. If you go into General, go into Accessibility, and then you go into Display, Accommodations, and then if I turn on my color filters and turn on my grayscale, it turns the whole tablet gray. Just different forms of gray. And we found with our sensory kids that like alertness and that brightness of the screen can be very distracting when we're teaching and learning. So when we turn on our grayscale, it really mutes down. And they say it's proven that those bright colors actually ping like almost like a drug in the kid's brain, and it just sets something off. So if we can lessen that effect of the screen in itself, for not all of our kids need this, but some of our kids you might see need this more than others. And actually, what's her name, Denise?
Yeah.
She gave me a great one too. She's very adamant that the blue light, she said, eventually will kill us. So if you go back to display and brightness.
So it's not in General.
If you go to night shift, you can actually mute the blue light on your iPad as well to protect your eyes. You know they have all those blue light glasses and blue light or fluorescent light covers. This actually distracts. Did you turn it on?
Yeah, it doesn't work on. It's doing it on my iPad, but it won't show it on the screen.
You can see it on mine. So I actually did. This is grayscale with the blue light taken away. So it just mutes all of those bright colors for maybe for you. But for some of your students, they might need this. And just if you could quickly turn it on and off for them. And especially like if you're in Google Classroom, you can't do this to all of the iPads, but it's nice if you just say like, hey, I need just some time with you right now. I need you to focus. I'm turning this on grayscale. When you're done with the lesson or when you're doing something else, I'm gonna turn the color back on. But right now this is just, we need focus. And sometimes our kids, just to get the color back, you'd see like a switch, like automatically, like, okay, I'll pay attention if you just bring the color back. So it's kind of scary and interesting all at the same time. The next one is the magnifier. If some of your students are having a hard time actually reading the document, if you turn on your magnifier, all you have to do is a 3-button click on the home screen, like a really quick, and it turns this, like you can see it on mine. Oh, he's doing it. Okay, good. Turns it into a magnifying glass. So even if some of our seasoned teachers, again, what's her title? I don't know Denise's title. She says she has
Director special?
an over 40 app, so it has a magnifier and a light, but I'm like, it's already, I've learned a lot. But this is already on here, so you already have a magnifier on here, and you can just leave it on, and whenever you need it, it's just a 3-click on the home screen. Zoom is another great one, so the magnifier is for things that are not on your tablet. The zoom is for things that are on your tablet. So if you want to institute the zoom, that's in a 3-tap, 3-finger. And if a student has a hard time on a document, they can tap the screen and it'll just zoom in on that specific piece of literature or whatever they're reading on their tablet. Now, Brian said you guys are familiar with speech to text or text to speech. So I'm not going to go over that so much. But when you're looking at speech in the speak screen, notice all.
You want me to go to?
Yeah, would you?
Actually find something with content?
No, if you can go to accessibility, I just want to show them where all the different buttons are in the speech and talk to text. And I think it's important that if you do have one-on-one with your kids that you're showing them where all this stuff is. Because what's nice about these devices, which I actually really, really, really appreciate about the devices with Apple that they make, is that they do have these accommodations for our special ed learners. Can you find it?
I'm there.
Oh, go to accessibility.
No, I am there.
Oh, you are? Is it frozen?
It is.
Okay. Well, the last two ones I wanted to show was speech to text. We only have about 5 more minutes, and then the larger text to it, where everything becomes larger. But while he's like looking for those two, got it? Okay, so when you're on speak screen, this sometimes drives me crazy when it's on. But what's nice about this, especially with voices, and that's why I said I think it's better if instead of doing this, if you do have the ability to record your own voice, the data is there that the kids respond better to hearing a familiar voice read aloud, and they just understand how you read and how you speak. So if you could almost, instead of doing this sometimes, like I know they're not going to be able to do this all the time, but especially with tests, if you could read aloud in those voices. But make sure you show the kids the different voices and the speed, because even with the differentiation in our learners, some kids might need it slower, some kids might need it faster, and let them pick the voice. Sometimes just them having ownership of picking the voice on their tablet for the read aloud makes them have a little bit more ownership of the test. But also, I think this should be offered to the whole classroom, not just your students, but when you offer it to the general ed population, I think it's a nice option too, because then our kids don't feel isolated and that they're the only one that needs this read aloud. Because some of the general ed population really benefits from that as well. And then the last one is larger text. I think it's in display and text size. Yeah, larger text, up at the top. This is nice too, and I know a lot of people do this on their phones. So if you have any students suffering from vision, this is great too, because it automatically folds everything and makes every part of that iPad larger and bigger. Now, before I leave, is there anything that you can find in the accessibility features or something that you're doing in your own classroom with the iPads that you've really found is working or not working, or you need a solution for something specific? Because we've been using iPads now for 4 years in Amherst, so maybe we can have some answers for some of your questions that, and you have some of our kiddos, so I'm glad that he asked me to come out because I'm happy to help all of our Amherst kids.
Is there any way that if I give my student a piece of paper that has text on it, that how can I then have the iPad read that to her?
Ooh.
And it's not coming from like a web page or something. Is there some sort of
so you
trick?
have a PDF actually, like that, take the picture of the PDF, the document?
Well, what if it's, I mean, just like a worksheet or something
That's not on
that I have that's not online.
Hard copy.
Well, that would be something that you'd have to do the read aloud voice with, and then the QR code with the voiceover. But I don't think that an iPad could visually take a picture and be able to.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I don't think there's any optical character recognition that can
that can do that. I
That
think
can do
that's,
that, okay.
that's the little bit of extra time up front to create something electronically that can then be read in a lot of different ways.
And we've noticed too, and I know this is with your first year, it's a lot more work up front, like even with IEPs, we're noticing this with more digital. But then once you do the meetings and you're writing your IEPs, those goals, like you have all that data. So it's a little bit more work on the front end, but then in the back end, it's just a lot easier. And then years going forward, you have all that digital data stored anyway. So that's what we've found, like it was a little bit hard at the beginning, but creating that content, it's just like when you're first year teaching. It took you a couple years to build and create content, but then after like a couple of years teaching, you had this file cabinet to pull things from, and that's the same way with implementing a new device. It takes a little while to build and create, but then you now have this digital file cabinet of resources to pull from.
And as you said earlier, and I'll tell everybody, if there's something that you want to do like that, certainly let me know individually, as a few of you have, Freckle. And we will do our best to explore how it can work, and if it's something that can be figured out. As I said when I introduced myself in this new position, that is part of my job, is to take some of that off of you, so we can figure out how it works, so you can do more
And then somebody
with
in the
less.
first group, he has a web quest, and he's gonna QR code all of the web quest, and so now and I'm assuming he'll put them up around the room. So instead of him giving the URLs, now he'll
Yes.
QR code the whole web quest. And another thing too, do you guys get observed? Like, do you have to do that?
Yeah.
This is great for observation stuff. So if you're like, if all else fails and you just wanna try this for a great observation, then try one of these for observation, and that way you can talk about how you're doing quick formative assessments, or you're able to use this iPad in an innovative way. So, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I know Brian said he'd be more than happy to help you with any of your content. Cool.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Folks, don't worry about your trash. I'll throw that away. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, and if all else fails, if you could just turn your kid's iPhone to grayscale, you have made a successful move today. And they'll never know how to turn it on.
I'm afraid for like voice to text, we'll just start choosing like indie or something.
Yes.
I'm just choosing random stuff.
They might do that.
They will do that, but I mean, like, what have you been since you were in the classroom?
OCR document reader, Jake?
Yeah,
Is it an app?
it's $5.
Sorry.
Can't.
I know. It costs any money.
Oh, I probably should have stopped